It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
And welcome into another edition of Musso at the Box. Portal comings and goings for LSU baseball. Brady Neal, the latest guy to jump in. But all in all, we have two entries to talk about, two commitments to talk about. And where does the catcher position now stand on LSU's recruiting board when it comes to need? We will jump into all of that here today. So smash the like button, get subscribed up on the YouTube channel if you haven't already, get subscribed on your favorite podcast app if you have not already, and let's get right into it. We'll start obviously with Brady Neal. That's the biggest news, and then we'll go into Javen Coleman and then kind of into the guys that LSU got as well. But let's start with Brady Neal. So obviously this has been something rumored for a very long time, and we've kind of passed along as many updates as we could on this as many different times as we've been here throughout the offseason. But when we first looked at the roster for 2025 in the mere days after LSU season ended, we talked about the possibility of Brady Neal entering the transfer portal. As of late, it seemed like that, I don't want to say it had gone by the wayside, but it did seem like that had cooled a little bit. With every passing day, with every comment made by Jay Johnson, it seemed like things were trending towards maybe Brady Neal returning to LSU. But as of Monday afternoon, that is no longer the case. Brady Neal will enter the transfer portal. Jay Johnson went out of his way a couple different times in his end-of-season media availability to mention Brady Neal and talk about positive conversations with Brady Neal, and mentioned him not just in that light, but specifically by name when talking about the 2025 team. Give a listen to this one.
Had exit meetings on Wednesday that were very positive. I think, looking at the players that have committed to return for 2025, you're starting with some really good pieces and some great character. In terms of those players that I had meetings with, and I left plenty of them out. Brady Neal, Jaden Newt, excited to get him on the mound really for the first time. It's fluid. It's really fluid right now, and it is what it is.
So that was at the beginning of Jay's press conference. This was like about a 43-minute, 45-minute session. That was at the beginning, and then he did it again at the end.
If we're going to be good next year, Brady Neal needs to be a good player. Cade Anderson needs to be a good pitcher. Chase Shores needs to be a good pitcher. Larson Brown needs to take a step forward. Milam needs to take a step forward, because it's also about development. And then, when Tommy White shows up or Paul Skeens shows up, you're a better coach.
So Book ended the press conference with that. And again, could he have just been talking to his guy in the media? Sure, coaches do that all the time. But again, near the ground, it kind of sounded like, the meeting actually did go really well. And Brady, who was very much on the fence, looked at it and said, okay, maybe there is a path for me to the field here more consistently or as the full-time starter, because make no mistake about it, that's what this is about. When you look back at Brady Neal's time at LSU, that's what it's always going to have been about. Brady Neal enrolled early at LSU. He was a top 50 draft prospect coming out of IMG. He's originally out of Tallahassee, coming out of IMG, top 50 draft guy, and it was a big get for LSU to pull him onto campus. And like I said, he enrolls early. He is your opening day starter as a freshman on that 2023 team, is given plenty of opportunity, mainly because of the bat, and you're going to try to bring the defense along. An injury derails his freshman season, and then nagging injuries hurt him as a sophomore. Brady Neal was supposed to be the opening day catcher again in 2024, but a nagging injury kind of pushed that back a little bit. And then he tried to play through an injury in the middle of the season and couldn't. And ultimately what you ended up with was a lot of Alex Milazzo, and Milazzo played great. He is your veteran guy, and it was a great asset to have him, and especially down the stretch, he was 100% your best option at the position, and you're trying to win baseball games, and that's what you went to. But if you're a guy like Brady Neal, you're looking for, now going into your draft year, you're looking for a solid, I don't necessarily want to call it a promise, right? But you're looking to be the guy. You're looking to be the guy going into your draft year, and that that probably wasn't totally in the cards. It wasn't totally in the cards. at LSU. You have Blaze Priester coming in, who we'll talk about here momentarily, but it wasn't in the cards. And ultimately, ultimately Brady Neal will look elsewhere. Where might that be? Florida State's always a team that's going to be rumored, but you look at a guy like Brady Neal, he goes in looking at some portal rankings from 6'4 Analytics, which, by the way, they're the ones who reported this first. But looking at some portal rankings for them, they have Brady Neal the 10th best player in the portal. He will have his pick, and it will be a situation that he feels fits him most. Is this a bummer? Yeah. Is this a loss? Yes, it is. It is a loss. Don't let anybody tell you that it's not, because that's not being truthful. It's just not. Your depth has taken a massive hit, and I'm going to get to that. So, yes, this is absolutely a loss. This is a guy who's a top 10 player now in the portal. This is a guy who, with the right season, is going to play himself into a hell of a draft pick. It's an immensely talented guy with plenty of upside and plenty of room to still develop. Yes, this is 100% unequivocally a big loss for LSU. Now, is it the end of the world? No, it's not. Because the thing at LSU is you're always going to have options. Now, you might have to work a little bit harder for some of your options, but you're always going to have options. When you look back at Neal's career one more time, you did see a jump, but you just didn't see the consistency in conference play either year. Whether it was as a freshman, he was hitting right up around 300 in the non-conference, heading into his first SEC season. Really struggled, then had the injury. You look at 2024, again, you see a 274 average. You see the 9 home runs, 31 RBI, all of that, a nice jump up, but it still lacked in SEC play. And that's where the veteran of Alex Milazzo was really able to take over and become your everyday guy, especially around the injuries to Brady Neal. Brady Neal, that 274 average, he hit 143 in conference play. Of those 9 home runs, 2 of them came in SEC play. Now, the lasting, image you have of Brady Neal was him coming up massive in the regional for you when Alex Milazzo went down with an injury, and you were hoping that, okay, that can build. He can build onto that and go into 2024. But again, what it's going to come down to with a guy like that, as highly touted, going into his draft year, is playing time. And it's not to say that Brady Neal wasn't going to be the everyday starter for LSU in 2025 or couldn't have been the everyday starter in 2025. There just wasn't the guarantee. There wasn't the promise of that type of playing time needed to keep him here when it was all said and done. Through all the exit meetings, through everything that happened since the end of the season, there wasn't enough. So where does that leave LSU? Because like I said, yes, this is a loss. You now have no returning catchers from 2024 going into 2025. None. And that is absolutely a position that LSU needs to vault to the top of their recruiting board and go get somebody right now. If I'm LSU, I'm not waiting until the draft. I'm not, because I'm not going to risk anything there when you have no one returning. You can't risk waiting, no matter how good you feel about a certain guy making it to campus or not. You can't risk it. LSU has had kids on campus filling out classes and leave and go to the draft looking at you, Christian Cairo. We'll never forget that. Everyone here will always be haunted by that. The kid is in line registering for classes, and the Indians call. Now the Guardians, they were the Indians, then call with more money, and he gets out of line and leaves. So you can't, you go get someone now. Like that, if I'm Jay Johnson, if I'm LSU, that's what I'm doing. I'm going in the portal, and I'm getting someone now at catcher. And I know what a lot of people are going to say. What about Luis Hernandez? Sure, he's an option. He's also draft eligible. And he might be more valuable to you at first base and or DH if he gets here. If he gets here. But that plays into the risk in this whole thing. Then you have Blaze Priester. And Blaze Priester has had a really interesting relationship, in a sense, with LSU. This is a guy who, like Brady Neal, has tremendous upside, especially at the plate. You're looking for a little bit more consistency on defense from him. One really good year in junior college defensively, and then most recent, took a step back. That's in the numbers. The numbers bear that out. That is subjective. That is not debatable. And I'll get more into that here momentarily as well. But because of that and him being a draft risk, I don't think you can wait. Does it look like Blaze Priester will make it to campus? Sure. Right now it looks like that. But who's to say throughout this process if there's not a team that falls in love with him and the upside and offers him a number that he will take? Now, what I will say is Blaze Priester is a guy that has been linked to professional baseball for as long as we've all known about him and we've all talked about him. And no one's been able to give him his number yet. So, yes, that probably does bode well for LSU. If you're unfamiliar with Blaze Priester and his story, went to Live Oak, hadn't committed anywhere until right up and before the 2022 MLB draft. It was largely thought that he was just going to the draft. But ultimately, the number didn't work out. LSU was able to convince him to commit. He's on the roster to start the 2022 season, Jay's first year, but there's not playing time with Tyler McManus and all those guys. He doesn't get on the field. He goes the junior college route because at that point, he's not locked in at 3 years at a 4-year university. You can go pro any time out of junior college. So it's hopefully a quicker route. Well, he ends up now 2 years at Meridian. He's committed back to LSU. And he looks like your saving grace. But like I said, I will tell you, obviously there's the draft risk, maybe lower than previously thought. But yes, he could come to LSU and start day one for sure. But there's still some development that you need to see there. So if it sounds like I'm not totally sold, I'm not. I'm not totally sold. There's always been this flirtation with the draft, and yet you haven't gotten quite to that point where you can get what you want out of it. Is it one of those things where it's like, hey, man, why aren't you getting what you want out of it type deals? I think that's fair. Now, we keep mentioning the upside, and when you look at it, there's huge upside specifically at the plate. In 2 years at Meridian Community College, Blaze Priester has hit 368 with 24 homers, and he's drove in over 100. That's in 2 years. And the strikeout numbers are really nice, too, if we're being honest as well. So you love what the guy can do at the bat. Mention the fielding, and you want to see maybe a little bit more consistency. In his first year, as a freshman there in JUCO, fielded .992 and only had 2 passed balls. Very, very good. This past season, a little bit of a step back. 7 errors, 9 passed balls. Brady Neal, who had his fair share of struggles behind the plate for LSU in 2024, had 6 passed balls. Why the drop-off there? You need more consistency. So that's what I get at when I'm like, yes, the upside's there, but how much better of a slam dunk option really is he? And are you guaranteed to get him? Let's say you do. That's still one guy, right? That is still one guy at catcher for LSU. That's it. One. You have Cade Arambidi committed in this signing class, but he's absolutely a draft risk. Absolutely a draft risk. This is a guy who at one point was projected to be a first-round pick out of high school. Now, he has slipped a little bit there, but can he still go in the top 4, top 5 rounds? Absolutely. Can he still go in the top 3 rounds? Absolutely. And if that happens, he's gone. So that's what I'm saying. He's really, really good. Like, he is viewed as one of, if not, the top prep catchers in this class heading into the MLB draft. Which shouldn't be surprising. That's the type of player LSU attracts. That's the type of player littered throughout this class. That's why we're all so intently watching the MLB draft. But that's what you're up against there. And if you get one out of those 2 guys, Priester and Arambidi, to campus, you need more. And that's why I'm sitting here telling you right now, if I'm LSU, I'm not waiting. I'm going right now. Catcher is at the top. Right now, you need to continue to get pitching. You need to continue to find some good bats and keep filling out your infield. But man, with losing Brady Neal, and I'll be honest, I don't think this came as a big of surprise over there at LSU as it did to some just reacting to it on social media. So you got to go. You have a great option in Blaze Priester. Great option. Plenty of upside. Just looking for a little bit more consistency now at a higher level. Will it translate? It is fair to ask that question of him like we have asked that question of everybody that LSU has brought in from a lower level. So that's a great option. But do I feel good about LSU's catching position right now in the summer heading into the 2025 season when you have one great option? No, I don't feel great. And I don't know how anyone can. So they need to go get more, and they don't need to wait until it's draft time or wait and see what these guys are doing. And you might ask, wouldn't that make it easier for a guy like Cade Arambidi to take the money that he's offered if LSU goes out there and adds another catcher and it's just a tougher way to the field? Sure, maybe it does, but you can't think about that totally right now. You have to make sure you're set and ready to go in the event that he takes the money anyway. Even if you do wait and he takes the money anyway, you can't be left there with your hands in your pockets. They need to go get it, and they need to go get it now. So that's my old take on Brady Neal leaving, on catcher spot, all of it. Really stinks that he left. Yes, that's a loss. Go get somebody as quickly as you can. Don't wait to fill that spot. The other guy who left out is Javen Coleman. We've been talking a lot about Javen Coleman. Said he fell into that category of guys who had three options. He could return to LSU, he could go to the draft, or he could enter the transfer portal. He has entered the transfer portal. And he is going to be a giant case of what if. When you look back at his time at LSU, it's going to be a case of what if. That's a guy who turned down $500,000 last offseason from the Dodgers, and they were surprised. LSU was surprised when he did that. And ended up back here. And he started out in your rotation early in the year as you were trying to kind of figure things out. But ultimately, the command issues were just too much. From a sensational freshman season to a great start to the sophomore year before blowing the elbow out, and he could just never really get back to that form you saw from him as a freshman when he was shutting down the Oregon Ducks in a regional in Eugene. Like, that is the greatest moment of Javen Coleman's career at LSU, and it happened as a freshman. So, yeah, it's fair to look back and say, what if? But it's not surprising. This is a guy who also, in his last year of eligibility, and again, he falls into that category of some guys we've talked about with LSU that could take the money pro and not actually end up anywhere else because this is his last year of leverage. But if he doesn't get a number even comparable to what he got offered last year, he needs somewhere where he knows he's going to be able to start or at least chew up innings. So he's out the door. And you wish Javen Coleman the best. You wish Brady Neal the best. Those guys were part of a national championship at LSU, and they'll be remembered for that here forever as well. It just didn't work out. Did you wish it would? Absolutely, but you go forward. And when you look forward, you already see guys in the boat, two really, really impressive ones on the mound that LSU picked up this past weekend. Right-handed pitcher Luke Hayden out of Indiana State, who I want to talk about there, and then Deven Sheerin, who is the guy you should really, really be excited about for a couple of different reasons. Let me start first. I'm going to take them out of order. So Sheerin committed to LSU Friday evening. I should start with him, but I want to spend more time on him, so I'm going to take them out of order. Let's go Luke Hayden. That happened on Saturday out of Indiana State. Really, really nice arm, really nice prospect. A guy who started his career at Indiana, played 2 years there, and then transferred to Indiana State, where he just played his third year. So, yes, he is draft eligible, and yes, he is a big draft risk. There is no guarantee that Luke Hayden makes it to campus. If he does, he is a guy that has performed in multiple different roles, both at Indiana and Indiana State. Most recently as a starter, starting 16 games, all of his appearances, and I just freaking closed out of my notes. He had about a 3.4 or so ERA at Indiana State. Let me pull it back up. and I mean, performed really, really well. 3.81 ERA, a 7-2 record. He struck out 91 in 78 innings. When you look at him, you look at those numbers compared to him at Indiana, and it's a drastic improvement. In his 2 years at Indiana, he had an ERA of 7. And the walks were a problem. 43 walks in 51 and a third innings in 2 years at Indiana. You look at him at Indiana State, 78 innings, 47 walks. Almost the same amount of walks in one season as two, and you had close to 30 more innings. That's a big improvement. Like, that is a big improvement. I should say, primarily fastball slider, multiple pitches, though, but the fastball's mid-90s. The slider's pretty darn good, too. He fields his position well also and has a nice pick for a right-handed pitcher as well, just kind of watching some tape and some highlights. So that's a guy that if you get him through the draft, and again, yes, he's a draft risk, yes, he's draft eligible. If you get him through, that's an immediate impact arm for you in some capacity. Sure, he would absolutely get an opportunity to start, and you should be fired up to have him. If he doesn't work out as a starter, he absolutely could find a role in the bullpen, although I would imagine somebody in his draft year, if he makes it, he's going to get a hell of a crack at being a starting pitcher for LSU. So that's really exciting. But the guy you should be most excited about right now is Deven Sheerin. Because Deven Sheerin is still raw. And he's got so much talent, and you would have him for 2 years. Sheerin just completed his freshman season at Mount St. Mary's. He's 6'6.5", 240 pounds. The fastball gets up to 98 miles per hour, which is great. And you can look at that and be like, oh, man, you get really excited about that, right? The star of the show for him is his slider. It is already a plus pitch. He has a curveball and a changeup as well, and he's working on a splitter. This is a guy who profiles as a starting pitcher for LSU. Maybe not immediately when he comes in for 2025 because he has the 2 years of eligibility left, but this is a guy who absolutely, with all those pitches, the ability to hold velocity, profiles as a starting pitcher at some point in his career. And for what it's worth, he will also absolutely get an opportunity to work his way into starting rotation as a sophomore at LSU. It just might take a little bit longer. He's another guy where you want to see a little bit more improvement in control and command, and you did see that down the back half of his freshman season. But ultimately, you look at the freshman year, it's an ERA of 4.76. He struck out 109 in 70 innings. He threw over 100 pitches 3 different times for Mount St. Mary's, and in none of those were in a start. So you look at him, okay, if it doesn't work out in a starting rotation role early for him at LSU, he can give you some long middle relief. Like, he can be that type of guy for you. It is just tremendous upside. And the fact that he has the 2 years of eligibility, you can really develop, you can really mold. Nate Yeske can really get in there and get his hands on this guy and work and build him up and improve, on the command. 32 walks in 70 innings, that's a higher number than you would like. But for a freshman, it's actually pretty darn good, especially when you combine it with 109 strikeouts. So there's plenty of upside, plenty of room there, and you have him for 2 years. That is one reason you should be extremely, extremely excited about Deven Sheerin. So that's a huge get. I mean, that's a massive get for the immediate and for the the immediate future and the more longer term future there for LSU baseball. Because I think you look at that and you go, man, best case scenario, you just got a 2-year starter. Like, best case scenario, you just got an addition to your rotation that throws 98 with a friggin' hammer of a slider. And, oh, by the way, 3 other pitches. And you have him for 2 years. That's incredible. Or you get a guy who can give you some middle relief, pitch at the back of your bullpen, and then work his way into a starter as a junior. It's a huge win right now for LSU, getting a guy like Devin Sheerin. Will it translate? Fair question to ask. Have a good feeling, though, that 98 with a wipeout slider will translate if you can really get the command of everything else around that going. So, y'all, I love the pickup of Chandler Dorsey. I love the pickup of Zach Cohen, but it is hard to look at Devin Sheeran and not be most excited about that addition for all the reasons that we've talked about. Mainly, he's not just a one-year guy. At least on paper, he's not just a one-year guy. And that's somebody who was highly coveted. Highly, highly coveted. Some numbers on that slider, 40% whiff rate. 40% whiff rate on his slider as a freshman at Mount St. Mary's. The fastball, not only is it up to 98, it's one of those with the late life and the good ride through the zone. Averaged 19 inches of ride on the fastball. Like this, that's why I say, will it translate? Probably, because that's just some pretty elite plus stuff already, and you mold him in with a couple other pitches, you've got a real dude potentially there in Devin Sheeran. So that is an awesome pickup for LSU. Going forward, I'll be fired up to watch him pitch and fired up to see what role he settles in, because he can give you a lot of versatility, as we did just discuss. All right, that's going to wrap it up here on Musso at the Box. Y'all smash the like button. Get subscribed up if you have not already on the YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast app. And be here next time. We'll have plenty more off-season news to carry you through on Musso at the Box.